What is crack-a-lackin', fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Favale coming at you with my certified fantabulous co-host, Grant Hughes, who's on the mend from being sick, but is powering through. Anyway, he went through a live stream at the critical mass of his illness, and now he's powering through for our second mailbag of the week because he cares about you, the listeners, or at least the ones who ask questions on Twitter this time. Our first question that we get to, well, first, this is terrible podcasting. Remember to subscribe. I think we get a lot of first-time listeners when we do the Twitter mailbag. So throw us the permanent subscription, Apple, Spotify. Reviews help us out a lot. And also subscribe, like videos on Twitter. On YouTube. We've definitely stopped growing there as much. And if you've done all those things, word of mouth, tell people about us. Shout us out on Twitter. Retweet our promos. Quote us if we say something on the pod you like on Twitter and tag us. I will engage with it. And join our Discord. The link to that is in the podcast and YouTube description. Always a blast in there. And follow us on all the socials. Twitter and TikTok are at HardwoodKnocks, and Instagram is at Hardwood_Knocks. The most important question we will ask, that we will always ask, but especially now because he's on the mend. Grant, how the heck are you feeling?
I'm feeling better. I sound worse, although, like, I would say I do kind of enjoy having like the 1 to 2 octave lower voice today, and maybe it's good for podcasting. Like, everyone just kind of like try to keep your arousal to a minimum out there with my deep and sultry voice today.
Yeah, like it might be an aphrodisiac now, but it's going to be a fleeting one.
Hard to say. Yeah. Don't get used to it because this is not normally how I sound. So,
well, I don't know if we get reviews that like, wow, that Grant's voice is incredible. You're gonna have to figure out a way to just like dial it back 2 octaves every single time.
I'm sure the technology exists. We could definitely mess with.
You do sound like you would make a lot of money narrating audiobooks right now.
Ooh,
so I don't know, like, is there a window where you can sign up for that and record a few over the next couple of days?
Maybe it could do like a truck commercial.
Yeah, like a built Ford Tough. You definitely have that voice going on right now.
Yeah. How hard is it to get a major automaker to sponsor a podcast? Can you pull that off?
We've done it. We haven't been sponsored by choice. I've just decided that we don't want to make money on this podcast. That would be selling out. We want to be like trendy and what they call like radio rejects for bands. We don't want to sell out. We want.
Yeah. I mean, I would sell out, especially as long as I have this voice. I think, built Ford Tough. See, I'm already losing it. I don't want to waste it. We should get into the mailbag. I will say, thanks for mentioning it.
Yeah, I would sell out too, and I would especially sell out if we get Ghost to sponsor us. Those energy drinks, those Sour Patch Kids energy drinks. I'm a sucker for those. So like, if Ghost is listening, sponsor Hardwood Knocks. We're one of the 3 most listened to podcasts that are recorded in my house. I think top 3 recorded at this residence. But before we get into the mailbag, let's dig into this mailbag. I want to ask you this question from Pistons All Day as my dogs are barking in the background. I want to try and mute as quickly as possible. How much does Cam Johnson get paid as a restricted free agent?
Yeah, so we talked about, I think the $25 million figure was thrown out on a previous pod, and we both thought less than that. I will say I could see him getting that much or more just because of market scarcity. You said you said it. This is going to be a rough free agency. There's not a lot of options out there. I looked at it as who's he competing with, and I was looking more at small forwards and combo forwards, and that's basically Harrison Barnes is the only potential free agent that I would put sort of on his level, and Barnes is going to be like a low 20s guy probably. But you mentioned a couple other guys that I'll let you talk about as comps. But so there's Brian Lewis of the New York Post reported that there's an expectation of like 18 to 20 million a year, which Cam Johnson's 27. That seems about right to me. Like, I think that's a reasonable number. He's a very good shooter. He can hold up on defense. He's played a meaningful role for a very good Phoenix Suns team. I just think the weakness of the crop and the fact that, he's good at the things you need a good role player to excel at. So he's pretty plug and play. So that might mean there's more offers. If gun to my head, I don't know that he gets to 25, 18 to 20, low 20s feels reasonable to me over probably 4 years.
Yeah. And look, he has more of a floor game too. Yeah. I think that you could explore, and he's scoring a bunch more in Brooklyn. His 2-point efficiency is held up. His threes have come up a little bit. And just the sheer volume, even if he's at 34.7%, and you're taking 7+ threes a game, there's a ton of value in that. I think what would hurt his market is feels like he's not so one position on defense, but he's kind of a 4 0.25. Like, you're not going to play him at the 5. You're not going to play him at the 3 either, or at least you shouldn't. And there's the market for that is, there'll be teams, but you also have Grant Williams and PJ Washington who are a little bit more multi-positional, where if you're a team with cap space, they're both younger. So if you're OKC, if you're Indiana, do you take a look at them first? But like, there's only so many of those guys to go around, and both of them might stay with their current teams. Boston, maybe they let Grant Williams walk if the offer's high enough. I don't think Charlotte lets PJ Washington walk. And so if you are an OKC, Cam Johnson makes sense next to Chet. He's not super old, doesn't command a ton of touches on offense, so he's not going to disrupt what you're doing there or on defense. I wouldn't hate his fit there. Him and Miles Turner would be a very interesting front court. Like, that would be, that's someone who, because he's spotting up around Miles Turner most of the time, like, that's going to let Turner even explore more of what he's done this season, where he's just improved decision-making on the ball, gotten to roll the basket more. So I can see the Pacers or the Thunder getting involved, but like some of the other teams with cap space, Houston, I would say no. Like, they're just so clogged up front, unless you're going to get rid of Şengün and or Jabari Smith. Like, other teams with cap space, Detroit doesn't really need him anymore. They have so many bigs. He'd be a better fit than most of the bigs that are on their roster, but you have Duren, James Wiseman showing a bunch of flashes since being there. So I look at Indy and OKC. Orlando can get to cap space, but like, no, I can't really see him there. I guess the Spurs, but he's like too old. You're not going to go after that. And so Utah as well, they had interest in John Collins, and Cam Johnson in theory would be cheaper than John Collins, but he's a restricted free agent. So, you're going to have to pay through the teeth to get him out of Brooklyn. And I think of the teams I mentioned, like, Indiana might be the most likely to do that, because they could be the closest to being ready to win, where I think OKC is getting there, but because they don't have that sample with Chet Holmgren, and I think are just inherently more conservative with how they approach their spending, that would be the team. And so, like, but at most, it feels like there are two teams that might come over the top. And like, that's, other players will probably have more expansive markets, would be my guess.
Yeah, I think just looking at the makeup of the roster, you might say that, well, the Nets have a glut of, forwards and wings and combo forwards. So that he may not be a priority to retain. One, I think you get him in the trade partly because you intend to keep him. And two, I would say that having Bridges and Dorian Finney-Smith on the same team and in the same lineups, like, kind of eases some of the lack of defensive versatility that Johnson has. So you can, you probably aren't super psyched on him guarding 5s or 3s, but you can, if you have the versatility at so many other positions, Royce O'Neal, throw him in there too, who's got, I think is like $9 million non-guaranteed next year, but he'll be back. So I think maybe that suggests that the Nets, are a better team for him to stick with than someplace else he might go, if all things being equal.
Did you want to pluck a question for us?
Yeah. Do you want to do the Diallo one? Let's do
the Diallo one. Friend of the podcast asked it too, so we have to.
This is from Lazarus Jackson. What's Hamidou Diallo's free agency outlook to you? Looking for an outside perspective. We should mention first that he sprained his ankle and is out for the year now, so it's very appropriate to be talking.
They said 3 to 4 weeks. He can come back because they have lots to play for.
Yeah, so right. They need those last couple wins.
I've been really impressed with him this season. I'm curious. What's interesting to me is, so since December 31st, he's shooting over 48% from mid-range. Now, those shots are coming as like kind of floaters or pushes and like long layups, I would call them. And the pull-up jumper has been sub 38%. But it's just like, he looks a lot more comfortable. Defenses are going to sag off him. But like, if he's turning a corner or if he's just taking 1 or 2 dribbles inside the arc, he looks very comfortable pulling up. And if you believe in that pull-up jumper as not like a crutch of your offense, but a safety valve, and you're going to surround him with even more spacing than Detroit did, I think that could inflate his market quite a bit, because you look at what else he does. He gets out in transition. He's done a great job of just cutting in from the corners this year, and defenses are going to play so far off him that if he can be opportunistic in those situations, capitalizing off of dishes from guys who are going to drive, that becomes huge. He can get to the foul line. It would be nice if he hit his free throws. And then you can even see, like, there's the multi-direction creation with the ball in his hands. I do think, even though he's shooting like over 72% on paint touches and elbow touches this year, there's a part when he is driving, and even his drive field goal percentage is up during that December 31st stretch, and he's doing a little bit more. It does feel like he blends this lack of fear in getting to the foul line. Like, oh yeah, he's fine getting to the basket. But then it might also be in his head that, hey, I'm shooting under 60% from the free throw line, because he takes these weird tough angled layups or does an extra move or gets too far into the basket and then tries to attempt a shot and isn't going to get fouled in a lot of those situations. At the same time, when he's in transition or when he is attacking the basket, he can get fouled. And so if he can even shoot like 69% from the free throw line, that's going to increase his value. But like I said, the jumper is a concern because they've just decided, especially since December 31st, like I think he's taken 6 or 7 3-pointers that he's not going to take the three. That's fine.
Yeah.
But it does intrinsically limit how you build out the roster, not around him, but like who he could play with. You're not building around Hamidou Diallo. I will say, if you trust the pull-up jumper, you're a team that likes to play with pace, and you're going to let him get off-ball movement. And look, Detroit, I'm not crazy about their spacing overall, but they've done a good job getting him to duck in from the corner. So if they could do it, I can envision spacier or better teams doing it. I think that changes his value a bunch. And some numbers that would probably be floating around is people be like, well, you could probably get him for like 4 or 5, 6 million. I'm thinking more mid-level, which is in the $7+ million. Like if he gets 3 for 23, and part of that is too, like, I know this, when you look at what he does defensively for them, part of this is how Detroit likes to defend this season, but like he's defended DeMar DeRozan. He's defended Emmanuel Quickly. He's defended Giannis this year. So like he's gone up and down the positional spectrum, basically 1 through 4. So as someone who's 6'5", and assuming there's no long-term issues with the ankle, plays with the physicality to guard that many spots, would I be shocked if he got closer to the non-taxpayer mid-level than the mini mid-level? Probably not. But I would think like that $7 to $8-9 million range over the course of 3 years. If he gets a 4-year deal, my guess would be it's for the mini mid-level or less would be my guess. Like he takes long-term security while a team goes, we want that more digestible cap number. But I do think despite his offensive growth, which has been super, again, 48% from mid-range on, I think it's like 33 attempts. It's not, even if they're coming as floaters, like that's not nothing. And you watch him and just like, there's the IQ on the ball to get to his spots. I will say more turnovers than assists this year. And that hasn't happened every year. But like when you look at some of the passes he throws, this isn't someone who is, even if you don't necessarily trust his handle, this isn't someone who's losing the ball on his handle. Like he just throws a lot of questionable passes. Some of that this year, I do think, is owed to the confines in which he works within Detroit's offense. But like it's not a red flag, but it's something you need to consider where there's not, multi-dimensional decision-making with him on the ball. But I think it will come down to how much do you believe in his ability to score from that mid-range area. Again, not as a crutch, but as a safety valve. And what he's done before his injury, for most of the season at that point, I think firmly puts him into the mini MLE territory.
Yeah, that's annoying because I had the mini MLE as like with a feels about right pay grade for him.
I have teams though. If you would like, did you come up with teams for him?
I got no teams. I think just broadly, I think like if you're gonna pay him more than that, if you're gonna go maybe the full mid-level, you have to sort of view him as the like a Bruce Brown, different player, or a Gary Payton II that was really like a minimally threatening 3-point shot away from being like viable as a 6-man or even a starter or a closer, just because of like, you mentioned some of it, but like there are not a lot of guards that are more difficult to keep off the offensive boards in the league, like period. And there are not a lot of guys that can, super high steal rate. He's insanely active, super energetic, like messes the game up for the other team when he's in there, does like so many good things that, he's good on the defensive glass too. He's just awesome at everything that involves, energy, effort, athleticism, like great at that stuff. So like, if you're going to pay him 9 or 10 or whatever the full MLE is going to be, you sort of have to assume that this abandonment of the 3-point shot this season is just like, this is what Detroit needed him to do this year or decided was the right call, but this is not what he's going to be going forward. Because if that's not, if it is the case that he just is not going to shoot threes, it's just never been harder for that type of player to like do anything helpful on a good team. So I think like there's a lot to believe in. But there's just that one glaring issue. It is encouraging that he has improved in other areas offensively, especially lately, like you mentioned, but I'm not going past the mini mid level, especially if I'm a good team that like needs him to give me like 15, 18 minutes. If I am not really sure that I can get him in and get him to just take threes at least, right? Like even just the threat of it would help. It's not a threat now. He has to score, on offensive rebounds and cuts, which he's good at, but that's just not, to me, sustainable. Where do you see him going though? What teams do you like him?
So I have some that I think could pay him more than the mini MLE, but the ones that I would be there are a bunch of teams that I think might throw him. Maybe not a bunch, but would throw him the mini MLE. But I think my 3 favorite spots would be Dallas, Denver, depending on what happens with Bruce Brown. I don't think they're going to be able to afford to keep him. And he's not a perfect approximation, but if you're losing Bruce Brown, your options are going to be limited there. And then my other one would have been what was my other one? Why didn't I write it? Oh, Phoenix. I thought would be super interesting for him just because they don't need the shooting and they could just get him moving away from the ball. And I think if you want to play smaller for some of these teams, you mentioned his defensive rebounding. Like we've seen that rate tick down, but you have to look at some of the lineups he's in and like the people he's playing with in the front court. The teams that I could see, there are 2 teams. And so like he doesn't necessarily he aligns perfectly with one of their timelines. So that's Indy, where they're just like kind of short on wings. He's 6'5", so he's not like a true 3, but you look at what he can do positionally on defense. Look at how they like to play on offense. Like they're running a lot of just all-out lineups. He's going to have plenty of space to work, and they like to get up and down the floor when Tyrese Halliburton's in the game. So I could see them just being like, we're not going to get a really good wing in the free agent market. We're looking to win now when we take this lottery pick. 2 years, 22 million or whatever it is. Like I could see that team. And I also thought about Utah. I don't know how committed they're going to be to actually wanting to win next year, but you have so much cap space. You don't really have a ton of wings. And it's just to provide some stability or coherence to your perimeter defense. And because you have Lauri Markkanen and there might be, let's say they keep Kelly Olynyk around too, that's going to be a front court. Like those are going to be minutes you play. You can play if you have both your front court spots. Yeah, maybe it's an iffy fit with Walker Kessler, but even if you play Kessler and Diallo together, you're always going to have 3 other shooters on the court with them. Yeah. So those were the 2 teams that I were like, could they go the 2-year route? Like even if it's 2 years and 24 million or something, just because he fills a need. And I think for the Pacers, he fills a more urgent need because the Jazz aren't going to be in a rush to really do anything there. And they do have Akbaji to monitor, but like they don't have a ton of wing prospects. Maybe they'll get maybe some in this year's draft. But I think Indy would be a team I would keep my eye on. If he's going to go for the mini mid-level or even the, like, is there a non-taxpayer mid-level team that I could see like kind of coming through here? That's where it gets like super challenging is, well, what's the non-taxpayer mid-level? Like, is it Chicago? Like, is that a team that might look at him for the actual non-taxpayer mid-level? I don't really know there. They need more help on offense than they do defense, actually. And so I don't know that he would be like the best fit there. The Lakers are only going to have the mini MLE. Miami probably only has the mini MLE. There's a lot of teams with only the mini MLE this year. That's the other thing that makes this challenging. Yeah. It's like you either have cap space or the mini MLE. Cleveland might have the full MLE, but I don't love him for the 3 spot. I'd like someone who's going to shoot it more.
He doesn't solve the problem for them, really. No, I mean, that's going to be the challenge. It's just, I think, I'm trying to think of like, where are the shot doctors? Like maybe you get him to OKC, maybe you get him to New Orleans.
Reunion.
Like somebody to sort that out. Yeah, he's a guy. I think we both agree he's a good player. He's just that the shooting is just that's the.
So if you had to go, we're spending so much time on freaking Hamidou Diallo right now, but I'm gonna the over under is I'm gonna say $8 million a year. You taking the over or the under on that?
I'd go under. I'm
gonna take the over.
All right.
He's gonna sign a 1-year deal for $20 million with somebody, and that's how I'm gonna win this. Let's find another question here. We're moving at a better pace. Oh, this one is built for you. It's from SGA Stan.
Okay.
Are the Kings going to win the Pacific Division? Asking for a friend.
Like, of course they are, right? What are they? I looked this up. I got them. They're 4.5 up on Phoenix, which is the only team that I would. I mean, unless you think the Warriors are going to go on a run, but they're not allowed to win road games, so that's going to be tough. And they're 4.5 back.
Not allowed to win road games.
No, they're not allowed. You didn't know that? It's true. I mean, how else do you interpret what's happened this year? And they have they're not going to catch Denver, but I think in that locker room they could convince themselves that that's a possibility because they're 4.5 back of Denver for the number 1 seed. So I think I just that's where they're going to be, right? Like what would have to happen for them to
If
fall off
Kevin
this?
Durant was playing, I
Yep,
might be like, well, I could just see Phoenix never losing again, even if they're only half-assing it.
sure.
But yeah,
Yeah. No, that I mean,
I think the more, because we know John Morant is coming back. He had the most effective counseling ever that only needed like a week
yeah.
or whatever it was to work. But like the bigger, or the, I don't even know if it's spicy, but like, are the Kings gonna finish like second or third in the Western Conference? And I might even say at this point, I'm just gonna be like, well, they're in second right now. They're tied in the loss column. Morant's coming back for the Grizzlies, but I think I'm picking the Kings to finish second anyway. The
I think
Grizzlies
I am
don't
too.
have Steven Adams or Brandon Clark right now. And I also we know how I feel about the Grizzlies. I call them frauds every chance that I get. So I think that they're not just going to win the Pacific. I think they're going to be the prohibitive 2 seed. And I will say, I don't know if you saw that this podcast published a Kings podcast with
Yes.
Greg. I think people, depending on the matchup, like if they run into the Warriors, okay, but like what if it's the Lakers? I know the Wolves have played them well this year, but it's all been without Towns. I think if they have both their bigs available, that gets iffy. But like, I think people, at least through the first round, there's going to be a wake-up call for a lot of people with the Kings. We've talked a lot, maybe not about the Kings, but we've talked a lot about how their defense, despite not being good, actually makes a lot of sense when you look at
Yeah.
their shot profile, the things they do well. The Heat are the only team in the league that do a better job of defending opponents deep into the shot clock. I don't know if that holds up in the playoffs, but like if it does, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit they gobble up that I think makes them, when you have the best offense in the world, more threatening than meets the eye, I guess.
Yeah. I think so.
Oh, typical Warriors fan, not sold here. Like,
I've been banging the drum on the location-based effective field goal percentage for them all year of how it's just like, yeah, their defense is bottom 5, but if you look at the shots they're allowing, it could be fringe top 10 or whatever. Like that is a real, we're 3/4 plus through, 80% of the way through the season or whatever it is. And like that's a real thing to me. I think in a lot of ways, all you can do on defense is just limit high expected value shots. And the Kings are pretty good at that. But then I just run up against the zoom out, fact of you need Sabonis on the floor to run this great offense. I mean, generally speaking, I think he's an awesome offensive player. Like he's just so good. I'm doing all NBA teams right now, and like it's killing me to figure out a way to get him on there. I don't know if I can do it as a third team center. But he's just not a good rim protector. He's just not good at it. And you're going to combine that with, I think the Kings are generally going to have at least one other suspect defender on the court. And that's just, they're going to have to win, 135 to 130. And that doesn't seem to happen in the playoffs. So I don't know what the matchup is where I would clearly favor them in the first round. I think in most cases, I would pick them to lose a first round series, most likely. And it's just because I'm struggling to remember a team with a defense this bad, even though there's underlying stuff that suggests it's not quite that bad, that I would feel good about picking to win a playoff series. You know what I mean?
So
like I got two ideas working and I'm just defaulting to, I don't believe in the defense.
So let's do this. Kings versus Timberwolves.
I'd flip a coin on that one. I think. I mean, the Kings should win that. They should win that, right? Okay, maybe that's one I think they could win if that's the 2-7.
Kings versus Mavericks.
I would pick the Mavs to win that series.
Really?
Yeah.
The Kings actually might be able to defend for a little bit.
Can they? How are they defending the Mavericks? Explain how.
Davion Mitchell would probably have to play, which would really hurt their offense.
Yeah. I mean, I don't love the Mavericks, but if you're telling me that this is going to be an offensive series, I'm going to pick the team that has Luka and Kyrie Irving. Basically, although
it feels like there's more variability caked into Dallas's offense because it's so perimeter driven. Where like between Sabonis, De'Aaron Fox's blistering speed, even what Monk has done on drives, that there might just, and like even the off ball stuff that's happening, they have more avenues to score. I would argue the Kings can score 140 points per game in more ways than the Mavericks. Does that make sense?
I guess so. I just think that the way the Mavericks can do it seems more likely to me. I look, I don't want to shit on the Kings. We just said they're going to win the division.
Let's move on. You wanted to pick out another question?
Yeah. So this one, well, I just kind of mentioned the all NBA thing. So, cause I want to have a conversation with you about this. This is from Old Dirty Dasher. So Kawhi has played 41 games. LeBron has played 47. KD has 42. Kawhi should be considered an All-NBA team. It should be eligible for an All-NBA team. I will say there is no like minimum threshold as far as I'm aware. I do know that in the
There
past,
will be.
well, yeah, maybe, and that's probably a good thing. But so generally speaking, the fewest games that anyone's ever made an All NBA team playing, you got to go way back to Gus Johnson in 1965, played 41. In the last, LeBron played 45 in 2021, but that was the COVID season, so there are fewer games. Dwayne Wade lockout season in 11-12 played 49. Basically, you got to play like minimum 49 or 50. So that's historically, there's no codified rule on that. And I am struggling mightily to pick all NBA teams right now for an article I'm working on for Bleacher Report, because there's so many guys that are in the low to mid 40s that may or may not hit that 50 game threshold. And 3 of them are here. Kawhi will probably hit it because there's only 2 or 3 back-to-backs left for the Clippers, and he's been playing every game. Yeah. But what is your thought on that? Like, I guess it gets to, what do you think the criteria for all NBA even are?
So I don't know if you separate it all from MVP, but I'm more inclined to weight availability when it comes to value in the MVP discussion, because that is such a big part of value. Whereas all NBA, I view it as just like, you're trying to find the best players. And if they've played a reasonable amount of time, I think it might be like 1,600 minutes or something for me, maybe 1,700. And so I look at total minutes more than I look at games played for all NBA and even MVP. And so like right now, Kawhi has played fewer minutes still than LeBron, Steph, and KD. I think he'll probably surpass at least 2 of those guys in KD and LeBron. Am I going to pick him over KD and LeBron? Again, it will depend a little bit on the minutes threshold, but he's been an absolute killer for, like you said, he started playing in every game minus back-to-backs since December 5th. So that's been 37 games during that stretch, 5 attempts from 3 per game, shooting 44%, almost 26 points, almost 4 assists, 1.5 steals. He's just been shooting an absurd percent inside the arc. He looks like, for the most part, Kawhi. There are still games where you go through and it's like, oh, but for the most part, he looks a lot like just dominant. And so if it comes down to, I think if we're talking about Durant, because positions matter in all NBA, Durant, LeBron, and Kawhi is like, I think Kawhi is probably the most likely to make it at this point, because I don't know when Durant or LeBron is coming back. And so if it comes down to, you can't fit all 3 of these guys in, as of right now, as someone who hasn't gone through their all NBA teams yet, and you and I will do podcasts on it. We should probably do that like the beginning of April or whatever. Yeah. I think Kawhi is going to get priority, assuming he continues to play in every game. And I don't think he's been like, I don't know if the nature of this question suggests that he's been dismissed I don't think he's been dismissed from the discussion. I think he's right there for sure.
Yeah, I haven't dismissed him because, I mean, I had this, it's so funny we have this question because I had this exact issue of like, because I look at it similarly to how you do. It's like, just who are the best guys that played, enough, basically. And you cannot make an argument that Kawhi is, to not make this team, the 7th best forward in the league. Like, that's insane. He's closer to the 7th. He's probably inside the 7th best player discussion, like full stop, if he's out there and, healthy. So I think, yes, he should be eligible. For me to feel good about it, this thing I'm working on, I really need to feel good he's going to get to 50 games, because that's my like arbitrary cutoff that I've set.
Right. And I get that.
But like, even Durant, because let's say Durant doesn't play another game. How do we keep Durant off of an all NBA team based on like when he was healthy, what he did? And he's going to play like barely.
I mean, he insulted Edmund Sumner, so that's how you keep him off.
Yeah, well, it's not the all NBA best teammate award. Or the best tactful evaluation of your teammates award. But yeah, I mean, I think the all NBA team is really more, and this is such a cliche thing, but it's more like when you look back at this season, who were just the best guys that year. It's totally separate to me from like, there's a cumulative value aspect to the MVP race that I just don't think is quite the same for all NBA. So if you get to 50 or anywhere in that neighborhood, I'm good with it.
What is interesting is, could the results be fudged if the league does what it typically does and just makes these centers eligible at forward, where I don't think, because people aren't going to be like clamoring to get Gobert on there, but between Adebayo, Jokic, Embiid, Sabonis, if those guys are eligible forward, if Anthony Davis is eligible forward, so those are like between those five players, Sabonis, Bam Adebayo, Davis, Jokic, and Embiid. If there's a rush to get all five of those guys who have played more minutes, well, Davis is like kind of around Kawhi territory, but to get all five of those guys on an All-NBA team, that then is where I think you start to look at, okay, like, is that going to cost Kawhi or Kevin Durant or LeBron? Because I think right now the only forward locks for me, correct me if I'm wrong, Jason Tatum and Giannis. Yeah. And then like that's like locks. And I think people are there's gonna be cases made for Siakam, rightful cases. There's gonna be cases made for Julius Randle. I know Knicks fans will make a case for Julius Randle.
If you think Jimmy Butler's a forward, Jimmy Butler should be on one of those teams.
Yeah. So like
I got a sub question. This is from not Grant Hughes at all. 100%. I swear. So Jokic and Embiid in some order on first and second team. I have Jokic first team right now. You could talk me out of that really easily and have Embiid on there. That's how close it is. But you have to pick a third team center, and we're not going to fudge positions. And you got to choose between Davis, Sabonis, and throw Bam in there, because I think those are the only three you'd seriously look at. Well, I'm picking Anthony Davis, and I feel horrible about it because I don't know if he's going to get the games threshold that I've set. But like, I mean, Jesus Christ, like he's fourth in the league, right behind Embiid and Raptor, and just, basically has been a defensive player of the year when he's been on the court. I just can't. And that's, again, I said we're not going to shit on the Kings. That shorts Sabonis in a big way, but I have to put Anthony Davis as my third center. Can you talk me out of that?
Yes, and I know I said that it doesn't necessarily matter about that, but like Sabonis does have like an 800-minute advantage at this point, which is quite sizable. And he is more of an offensive engine for his team than Davis is for the Lakers. And you look at the solo minutes, he's always going to need to be on the court with another creator. Sabonis does not need to be. Now, it sort of flip-flops when you're talking about defensively. He needs to be insulated, and Davis does not. But the Kings are winning regardless of not insulating him very well. And I think it kind of proves that having a better offense is more important. You want to have balance, but it's more important than having a better defense. And I do think for as good as Anthony Davis has been, especially for smaller stretches on offense, there's a limit to how far he can carry an offense without a requisite amount of talent and help around him. That doesn't exist, at least as narrowly, for Sabonis to me. I think I would pick Sabonis over Davis at this point. Is awfully fucking close. And the minutes, again, I say I don't weight it as much, but when you're looking at if the cases are actually arguable and you're looking at it's like statistically they're arguable, and then there's an 800-minute gap. Sure. How are you not? You would have to think my tie break here, but you would have to think that Anthony Davis has been like substantially more valuable to his team than better, this year than Sabonis to just ignore that 800-minute gap.
Follow up. The playoffs start tomorrow, and you get to pick one center who's not Embiid or Jokic, and you need to win a playoff series. Do you pick Davis or do you pick Sabonis? Because I picked Davis.
I might pick Bam Adebayo.
You can pick Bam. You can pick Bam.
This is a regular season award, is what gets really.
It is. Tough. I'm just saying that
I'm picking Davis. Yes, I'm picking.
Of course, right? So that's why I'm having a hard time with this, because I think my criteria skews closer to that question, like just who's the guy you got to have based on his play this year. And so to me, that's a no-brainer picking Davis over Adebayo. I think. I mean, you got to say like, well, he's going to fall down in game 2 and then be out for the rest of the series. Like, yeah, I guess. But this is to say. All NBA team criteria is really hard and hazy and fuzzy, and it might even be trickier than MVP, because you can't just count on this guy played 20 more games than that guy. Of course, that's more valuable. It's real fuzzy.
Yeah, that was a great 2 questions. Shout out to old Dirty Dasher and not Grant Hughes. Thanks. Do you want to take us out of here?
Yeah, thanks for the questions as always, everybody. If you have not done so already, please subscribe, follow us on our socials, which are, if you're watching this, they're on the screen for you, at HardwoodKnocks on Twitter, TikTok at HardwoodKnocks, Hardwood_Knocks on Instagram. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you rate and review us. Give us 5 stars on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Tell your friends and enemies, most importantly. And we close, as always, with a shout out to the one and only Frank Ntilikina and an apology to Jared Allen, who we mentioned this time in positive terms. So that's good. Thanks, guys.